and welcome to Fat Squirrel Speaks. Today is the last Friday of October, and this is episode 303. Yeah. I think. Yeah? Yeah, for sure. I'm Amy Beth, also known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry and the Fat SQRRL on Instagram. Thank you for coming over. It's really cloudy and it's pretty drizzly, so I really appreciate you slogging over. I hope you got to see some pretty leaves on the way, because like, y'all, October is almost over. I have like a great level of mourning in my heart for the October. It always seems like it goes so fast. I mean, okay, I just feel like we should have a resolution. Like, let's vote on a bill. Let's do something. Like, let's get rid of one of those, like, drudgery. We don't even have to get rid of it. But, like, let's, like, combine January and February into, like, Jebruary. And then, like, let's give those extra, 25 to 30 days. I mean, maybe 30. Let's just give them to October. I'm just saying. I think it's reasonable. I mean, billionaires can get away with not paying taxes. It seems like we could be able to lobby Congress to get some extra days for October. It seems reasonable. I'm just saying. So yes, I'm like greatly joyful and also sad about the beautiful Octoberness. I did make my family suffer through many cold nights until I let them turn on the heater. I still turn it off every day when they're gone. But thank you for coming over to my slightly chilly house. There's coffee and tea, and there aren't any, are there any goodies? There aren't any goodies, but there are apples and cheese. This week's episode will contain apple talk. It'll contain knitting. It might contain a tiny bit of book talk. It will definitely contain a few Weinbeck purchases. That'll be what we do. Business, I have a shop update on November 15th. Oh my gosh, I forgot I was supposed to do that. I have a shop update November 15th. And I was definitely supposed to schedule another virtual knit night this month. But like I said, I don't know what happened to this month. So maybe we'll do that the first weekend in November. Okay, we're definitely doing it the first weekend in November. We're going to do a Saturday night because I think that's good. Okay, so if you're a patron of the podcast, I post the link on Patreon and we'll have a little virtual knit night the first Saturday of November. Ta-da! Remember? Yes. Okay. Sorry, that was a moment. Okay. So another housekeeping thing. A few episodes ago, we were talking. I was going to talk about this last time, but then I just couldn't get myself together. A few episodes, I was talking about I think specifically I was talking about Susan B. Anderson, and then something else where I had seen something that they had made, and I was just so excited for it, and I was trying to I was asking y'all if you knew a word that could perhaps encompass this great joyousness at somebody else's, whatever they're doing, whether it's vacationing or creating things or whatever, that would encompass the feeling of I am so happy that they're getting to do that. And then but I also would like to do that too, but not as a in a negative way, just in a you are so awesome, I'm going to do that too. And so many of you were lovely and wrote in that what I am thinking of is this person's aspirational, and you're absolutely correct. Susan B. Anderson is very aspirational, and what I was talking about does definitely encompass that. I guess what I did not say, but that was in my head, was I was looking for some magical, strange compound German word or something, what is it? Schadenfreude, some strange, just wonderful amalgamation. So I don't think I've come up with it yet, but somebody suggested this beautiful word, which I want to share with you. It is not a word or a concept that is being lifted from my own culture. So I'm just going to like very briefly tell you what it is and then give you a link to somebody talking about it. Because I love it. And I apologize, I didn't look up who you were that suggested it, but thank you. Your face is made of brilliantness. So the word, it's available in, oh, what language? But the word that I can say is in Sanskrit. And that word is mudita. And so there's this beautiful explanation of it that is, I will try to vary. Again, I'm giving you like the top 1/100th of a millimeter of this information, right? So just like being like, hey, go look at what this person said. But what I understand to be at its core is that by rejoicing in somebody else's good fortunes or like their good actions or like their creations that they're putting into the world, that like your deep rejoicing in their creations actually earns karma, not just for the person who actually did the thing, but for the person who takes great joy in it. And I was like, I don't need the reason of karma to be excited about what other people are doing. But I also like that that's an idea to like encourage me to think about it. Like, oh, you know, like, so it creates this like combination of positive goodwill and goodness to think about. And like, I had this whole discussion with my teen this week about like the word happy, and like I had taken a survey where they were asking, it was like a mental health survey, and they were asking me if I felt happy most of the time. And I was like, who feels happy most of the time? Because to me, I think what they were really meant was like contentment, maybe. Like to me in my head, happy is like a big one. Like, right? Like it's something that feels like you can only have it for like a short period of time because it's like a very celebratory, it's a very like high energy word to me. And so the thought of like being happy all the time, I was like, I don't even know if that's sustainable. I definitely don't have that. And I don't want that. But like one of the beautiful things about the way this man described the mudita is that it is a way to always be happy, right? Because somebody else in the world is always doing something good. And so when you can take like great rejoice in what they're doing, like I was just like, that's like such a beautiful sentiment and something that I really need right now. So yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes to the video explaining it, and it's a lovely concept. It's not a lovely concept. It's a really flippin' powerful concept that really flies in the face of like what a lot of our very competitive, consumer, profit-based like culture like in America tells us is like where we should be moving and putting our energy. Like it really is like a very stark contrast to that, which is, yeah, it gave my heart great happiness when I read about it and was listening to it and trying to remember it throughout my week. So I hope you enjoy it too. Okay. Oh, and then during our last Patreon knit night, okay, there are always like lots of great things, but I wanted to mention this one thing which I thought was so stinking cute. So you know the little libraries, if you've never heard or seen of it, it's just like a little, it's usually like a very cute little box that people will put like on a residential street and fill it with books that are just like, you know, leave one, take, you know, whatever the situation is. But it's like a little book exchange, and this little space just kind of facilitates that. And so we have in the city, like we drive by a free food library that's just like outside of like a like community center. And so there's lots of different ones that pop up here and there, and some people have very strong feelings about them. I don't. I feel very nice about them. But somebody said that they've seen a fibrary, which is like a little free library, but like woolly and like fibery and I'm assuming crafty just in general. How cute is that? I'm dead of how cute that is. I'm not sure. But like you could, it could be like crafty supplies and things, but it also could be things like, hats and mittens. And in fact, now that I've said that, maybe that's actually what it was. Am I remembering completely incorrectly? My brain is a little bit porous. Okay, both of those things are lovely and I love them both. And I also love the word fibrary. So whether it is a place to pick up hats and mittens if you need them, or if it's a place to exchange craft supplies because that's lovely, both of those things are amazing. And I hope both of them exist. Maybe adjacent to one another. I mean, how sweet is that? Fibrary. Oh my goodness, right. What did I write? Oh, and the other thing that came out of my notes literally say bald dude not funny. So the other thing that we talked about lots of things, but this is the thing I feel like I need to this is so important that we need to talk about it. That is that the host of the Great British Bake Off, and I don't know I can never remember now if it's changed since it's over to Channel 4. But the host that is the bald host. Okay, I had to look up his name because I can never remember anybody's name. But anyway, the one that is not Noel Fielding, his name is Matt Lucas. He is the bald dude from my notes. We had several Brits on the call and they all agreed that he is not funny. So I would just like you all to know that it's not just me. And we've never talked about this before. You're like, where's this coming from? But like, that dude is not funny. Like, I can't figure out like exactly what it is. Like, I don't know if his thing is that I'm supposed to laugh at him and not with him. I kind of think that that's maybe what it is. And I don't like that. I do not like that. But I cannot pinpoint exactly what it is about him, but he is not funny. Somebody will probably disagree with me, but you're wrong. I don't care for him at all. Not at all. So anyway, and so yes, if you're gonna suggest that I also watch the Great Pottery Throwdown. Yes, it's amazing. Yes, that man cries and it's darling. I have not watched the Great British Sewing Bee one. I tried to watch it and I think maybe it was like the first season and I just did not care for it. It felt like very Big Four pattern company. Like it was like a much more traditional approach to sewing, which is not in any, I'm not putting a value on that. It was just not my jam at the time. But I was told that in later seasons, the vibe of it changes. So I'm going to check it out. But so those are the most important things that I have to tell you. That dude is not funny. Not funny. Train's coming for us. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is, I'm so excited because finally my favorite apple is available. And now I can't remember what its name is. Y'all, what is up with that? So my apple that's like my most favorite apple that's available locally anyway is called Gold Rush. Oh, I can remember the name of that. The very brief description is a medium-sized yellow to golden apple, a rich, spicy, complex flavor with crunch. An excellent keeper that gets better with storage. So this one is it. This one was available at my very local orchard. It's actually the one that's closest to me. It's called Adrian Orchards and it's actually in Indianapolis. Like it's within, is it technically within? Yeah, it's within the loop. No, it's right outside the loop. Whatever, super close. And so this one has this beautiful rusting on them. When I get them from my other orchard, I don't, because the other orchard in my area that carries them is Tuttle Orchard. But I don't remember them having this much rusting. when I buy them from Tuttle's. But I actually love russetating and think it is a highly, there we go, a highly desirable part of apples. Like, oh, look at, oh. Like, I just think it adds a beautiful texture. It's just gorgeous, right? And it makes them, to be honest with you, it makes them kind of look like an old-fashioned apple to me, which I think makes me love them more. But anyway, this is like the best apple. It's wicked crispy. Okay, do you want to hear? It's wicked crispy. The skin of it is like got enough body to it that it doesn't feel very papery, but it also doesn't feel tough. So it's like just a nice texture of the skin. It is super crisp, and I already said that, I know, but whatever. It's a really good attribute. And it has like, I would say that it's a sweet tart apple. It definitely feels like, sort of has like a Golden Delicious feel to it. And if you don't like Golden Delicious, like if you don't like those are too sweet, like whatever, that's totally yours. That's a reasonable thing. But Golden Delicious is one of those that it's beautiful when you first get them. Like the texture of it is beautiful, but it does have a tendency to get mealy fairly quickly, especially for a later season apple. But so it has like sort of like, it has the sweetness, I would say, of a Golden Delicious, but it has more tartness with it. And so it balances it just a little bit more. And I just, oh, it's not the tightest texture, which I think is another reason that I like to eat them. Because sometimes, like, I don't like a mealy apple that has like that granular texture to it. But sometimes, like Granny Smith, or sometimes even a Pink Lady, sometimes the texture feels so firm, like so tight, that it's almost hard to bite it, like to bite it and break it up. So this is not quite as like dense and tight as that, but it's still very crispy and pleasant. And they are one that it says they do better with age. I agree to that to some extent. Like they definitely develop more flavor notes as they sit, but if they sit too long, it kind of like reverses itself and goes back to a very sweet taste. So there's like a very interesting timeline, and I don't know what's happening chemically in the apple that is so cool and interesting, but there is definitely a progression of flavors. So like you can get them from the same tree, the same time that they've been picked, and you can eat one and then eat another one 2 weeks later, and they will taste different. But at the same time, like, and so they store really well. So lots of times if your orchard has them, they will keep them as like a storage apple if your orchard is open like year round, or if it's open like maybe into January or something for fruit baskets or whatever. Also, like, what a beautiful gift a fruit basket is. When I was a kid, that was the worst gift ever. My papa used to always give, he has 3 daughters, so he would give each of the daughters a fruit basket from a local orchard. And they would have like apples and oranges and pears, and then those like very those grapes that are very like musky. Like that sounds really gross. But it's a different variety of grape than that you can buy in like the grocery store. And it's probably because like it was a more local variety. But it has like a sort of like a muskmelon is kind of musky. Okay, definitely it's like super musky, and I actually don't like them. But it's like in that vein. When I say musky, it sounds like it's like like a grape that grew out of an armpit, and that's not what I mean. But they are very different than like the red grapes you can buy in the store. Like they were much less crunchy. They were bigger, and they definitely like had like more of a wild yeast on them that you could see. And then those like, there were like these candies that were like a cream center. They were like a drop shape. So like the bottom was a circle and it kind of tapered up into like a soft cone. And they were like, Were they like this big? Or is it because I was a kid and they were really like this big? But whatever. And then they were like, so there's like a vanilla cream and then it was dipped in chocolate. Those were the only good thing about that fruit basket when I was a kid. Because there would definitely also be like some hard candies in there. But they would be like the hard candies that were wrapped in like those like wrappers that were like a layer of foil and a layer of like colored cellophane-y kind of stuff. And they always had like a jelly filling. And I was just not into that. I still don't think I am. I mean, I would just be excited that there was a fruit basket. And it was always in those like, the basket was always like the real thin slatted wood. Like that you kind of think of as an orchard basket. And it had like the handle on it, like the metal bale handle. With like the wood. Did it have like a wooden thing? That seems awful fancy. My papa was pretty fancy. So it probably was pretty fancy. And they would always be sitting on the fireplace, like on the hearth part of the fireplace. Anyway, where are we talking about? The orchard. So yeah, if your orchard stays open. If you're open, they will use Gold Rush as like a keeping apple, and because it does keep really well. But then I think like I've gotten them, for example, like in March and been like, okay, this, I mean, it's still like an acceptable apple. But it's not like, it definitely degrades. That's my apple talk. Who needs TED Talks when we got apple talks, people? Come on. Okay, so Rhinebeck purchases. So I did not go to Rhinebeck this year, and I'm so glad so many of you did, and so many of you shared your pictures. It was very enjoyable to go with you. Hooray! But I did make 2 purchases from the same place because I was weak-willed. So Going Gnome makes the best felting kits. The best. They're nice price. They have everything you need. They have more than you need. And I just really love her gnomes. Oh my gosh. She's totally doing, well, they're totally doing like a Gnome of the Month surprise club. What do we call that? Just a club. They're doing a Gnome of the Month club. I might get tempted into that. I don't know. But so this was their Rhinebeck gnome this year. And you could ask for maple cotton candy, which somehow I still have not gotten, I don't think. Have I had that? Anyway, maple cotton candy or the apple cider donut or an apple. So of course I got the apple. And then the gnome of the year for 2022 is this. What? Oh. So rest and take care. That's the year. That's the gnome of the year for 2022. Okay. So I did have to buy those. It was required. Everybody has such beautiful things. I was greatly tempted on all fronts. All things were very enjoyable. Okay, so then the next thing, okay, I didn't mention this, but we're talking about a podcast for just a minute because holy Hannah, y'all, when I went to my sewing weekend with friends, I had heard about this podcast. And it's by, well, the reason I knew about it is because I follow Your Fat Friend on the Instagrams, and she is an author and a column writer, and she always has amazingly astute things to say. And I knew that she had a podcast, but I'll be honest with you, I wasn't ready to listen to it for some reason. I think, sorry, there's a fire truck. I think I was just afraid it wouldn't be what I needed it to be. You know, sometimes, right? Because there's a big spectrum when you're talking about fat issues. Like, and the spectrum can very easily go from like body positivity, which I am not against body positivity in any way, but that is usually not what I am looking for, because that tends to be, well, it's just not what I'm looking for. How about that? I'm looking for more like systemic, political, like issues surrounding fatness and fat bodies. Oh my gosh, by the way, speaking of systemic things about fat bodies, if you're getting your COVID booster or your flu shot, because your flu shot's intramuscular, right? If you're in a body that, the CDC says, if you're a woman over 200 pounds or a man over 260 pounds, that your intramuscular vaccines should be administered with a 1.5-inch needle, and that smaller humans, their shots would be administered with a 1-inch needle. And as has been pointed out, so that's the information. As has been pointed out, that is a very vague thing. Like when you're giving an intramuscular shot, you need to get the vaccine, the fluid, into the muscle. So when you're administering the shot, you can feel the difference between adipose tissue and muscle tissue. Okay? And some of us have, The Rock, for example, probably weighs, I don't know how much The Rock weighs, but he's a big dude, right? But he's like all muscle. So if they give him a shot, they don't need the 1.5-inch needle because he does not have very much adipose tissue on his arm. Okay? And so that's why that chart is not like the Holy Grail. It's also really poor because it requires the clinician, the person administering the shot, to like be able to estimate your weight. Because, for example, if you're getting your shot at like CVS or Walgreens, they probably don't, it's not like your doctor where they have a record of your weight. So you're requiring the person to just like look at you and be like, I think that person weighs 200 pounds. That's like a whole, like that's fraught with problems, right? Like fraught. Fraught. So like this is not the most helpful information, but it is a starting point of information. And especially if you are, okay, I'm not giving you any information, but like for me, I'm like, yeah, I really do want that longer needle, please, because there are no studies about COVID vaccine yet, as far as I know, but there is at least one other study that looked at, and I don't know the specifics, so, Facebook article is me. But it looked at like the efficacy of administering shots to people in larger bodies with the 1-inch needle versus the 1.5-inch needle. And this is, again, just intramuscular. So like your allergy shots, insulin shots, things like that are like subcutaneous, like it's a different ballpark. We're talking about stuff that needs to get into your muscle. That there was a lessened immune response for people in larger bodies who received their shot with the shorter needle. And again, that did not measure like the fat pad on everybody's bicep, I'm sure. So there's like ranges within the, like, is it a larger body? Like, is it somebody who weighs 210 pounds? Is it somebody who weighs 370 pounds? Like, right? Like in all likelihood, your medical provider will be a wonderful human who will know when they like touch your arm, will know like, okay, I need the longer needle or I need the shorter needle. But within the same space of existing, there are people who are less trained, who are less aware that it matters whether you get that shot into your muscle or your adipose tissue, that are giving shots because like there's just like, pharmacy techs that are like overworked and underpaid, and like, I'm not blaming a human with a face. How about that? I'm not blaming a human with a face. This is like a systemic issue. And that is all just to say that if you're going in to get your vaccine and you're a person in a larger body, if it were me, I would request the 1.5-inch needle. And I would be so nice about it, right? Like, you like do your little small talk with your clinician and you say, I just want to verify that you are giving me the shot with the 1.5-inch needle. And then your clinician is like, of course I am. I know what I'm doing. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so relieved. Thank you. Or they're like, no, we only have 1-inch needles on hand. I would have to go get a 1.5-inch needle. And then you can be like, oh my gosh, great, thank you. Could you please go get that? Do you know what I mean? Like, so obviously we are being super nice. That person has a face. They have a backstory. They have a lot going on. But you do too. And like, you're one of like 100 people they see today. But they're your only chance at getting that vaccine. So I'm just saying. So that is my little soapbox moment. Our health workers are doing a great job many, many, many times. But if you're in a fat body and you have received medical care that had fat bias, you're not going crazy. You definitely received that. If somebody says, it'll be fine, you can say, I'm sure it is. But I would just like the larger needle. Again, they're not like, they don't have to push the whole needle into your arm, right? Okay, so like I have to also say this. They're putting the needle, like they can feel the difference between the adipose tissue and the muscle tissue, as I said earlier. So like if they use the 1.5 inch needle and you're watching them, they don't push the whole thing in, that's totally okay. They can tell how far they need to put it in, right? So yeah, that's just a little bit of a soapbox moment. I know that like healthcare workers are really flipping stressed out right now. And like, I am so sure that like way too many patients come in and say, well, I read a Facebook article that says, that I should just snort this aromatherapy oil and that I'll be fine. So like, I completely empathize on both sides. Yeah. We're all humans. We all have faces. We're all doing our best. But just saying. Just saying. Okay, so going on. And that is also not to say that if somebody is rude to you, you have to continue to be nice. I'm just saying, like, start off with the, like, assuming the best intentions. But also just verify. Verify. Politely. Okay, so I'm actually going to just like rant a tiny bit more about this subject at the end of the podcast because I know not everybody needs to hear or wants to hear about it, but just in case you're interested, I will tag it on to the end. But for now, I'll just go on to the rest of the podcast. Okay, but man, things are going crazy. My mushroom is not strong enough to hold this nonsense. I still... Y'all, 10 years, still can't do the left-right reversal thing. Still very confusing to me. Okay, that's going to fall out in 2 seconds, but whatever, we'll just keep going. Okay. What's that all I need to talk about? Oh no, we're going to talk about this podcast. Okay, so the podcast, right, like if you're new, this is just how my brain works, y'all. It's very parenthetical. So the podcast is called Maintenance Phase, and its description is debunking the junk science behind health fads, wellness scams, and nonsensical nutrition. And then it ... and I can't click on it. Whatever. So, Aubrey, who is your fat friend, she was originally like anonymous, but then she came out as having a human name. Her name is Aubrey Gordon, and she wrote this book, What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat. And then her co-host is Michael. Sorry, that was Michael. Her co-host is Michael, whose name I cannot recall. Sorry, Michael. But he's highly entertaining. He is also, oh my goodness. Stop. He's also the host or the co-host of a podcast called You're Wrong About. So you may know of him from there. He's also a journalist, etc., etc. Okay, y'all. It doesn't matter who you are. Like if you're in a fat body or not fat body. If you're inhabiting a body, this is a great podcast. Okay, for one thing, completely devoid of the information that they're giving you. The interaction between Aubrey and Michael is my jam. Like, her laugh is so low and like so, like, she's like an ornery bear. Ornery is probably, that might, but she's just like a cantankerous yet lovable bear who's like chilling in her cave over the hibernation times, and like maybe it's a little smoky in there from all the like campfires that she's doing, even though she's a bear and she doesn't need that because she's hibernating. But her voice is like super low, but like super like her laugh, it just like inhabits her body in a way that I love. Right? Like, I love when people have a laugh that, I mean, I love when anybody laughs, but when people have a laugh that really feels like they're using their body as like a resonance chamber, it's my favorite. So she's got this amazing laugh. She's smart as a whip. And Michael is too, but he is like, she's like this very, to me, she's like this very like grounded, like sound, but he is a much higher sound, and he is also smart as a whip. They're both funny as all get out, and their interaction is just dynamic and wonderful. I highly recommend it. And then plus it's excellent information. It's well thought out. It's well organized. It's well researched. They talk about not just like nutrition and wellness and all this stuff. They don't just talk about that. They do. But like another part of the value addedness of the podcast is that they talk about, because they're looking at these things critically, they're modeling like how you can look at things critically. You meaning me and us and the whole of us. Like, so like through their critical lens, like through them asking like, well, what is the like methodology behind this research? It just helps to put you in in that mindset of like, what is the methodology behind this? Did this research really only have 8 participants? Okay, well then this needs to be taken not with a grain of salt, but with like a whole container of salt. You know, so just highly recommend it. Utterly enjoyable. The best. Also, Aubrey's book is great. It's pretty palatable. It's only 100 and... Oh, this is all the bibliography. Like, let me just say, it is 168 pages. And the notes / bibliography section is like 20 pages. It's sexy. It's very sexy. But, and it's broken down into a way that you can really access it just like chapter by chapter. There is you could just dive in on something that's interesting to you. So I'll read you the chapter titles. Chapter 1 is Into Thin Air. Chapter 2, Becoming an Epidemic. So it talks about the obesity epidemic. Chapter 3, What Thinness Takes. Chapter 4, On Concern and Choice. So it's about concern trolling. Chapter 5 is about the desirability myth. 6 is Such a Pretty Face. 7, First, Do No Harm. 8, The World to Come. So I am currently on chapter 4. And thus far, highly recommend. I can't imagine that my recommendation would change because, again, the podcast, so enjoyable. So enjoyable. I mean, I want to read it all. I like have too many highlights to read to you. Okay, I will read this one because this one is really, I don't know. This one really just gets to me. America is a meritocracy. We insist, defined by hard work and tenacity, the hallmarks of a true Protestant work ethic. Bodies become a symbol of that work ethic. The American exceptionalism that we have long believed defines Americanness itself. Fat bodies fly in the face of the work ethic that distinguishes us. Because it's just, you know, that's a well-constructed sentence. Sorry, my breaks when I read it were not the best. I was trying to slow down, but then my brain does this thing where it reads ahead, and it's just a whole thing. But so yeah, so enjoyable. But then I will also say that I started listening to Michael's other podcast that he co-hosts with Sarah. Who's Sarah? I don't know his last name. Again, I have very bad name memory. They're both a journalist, and they're all about debunking different things like Dare, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Iran Contra hearings. So one of the, usually it takes the form of like one of them like super, and this is how maintenance phase works too. Like it usually takes the form of one of them like highly researching thing and then like telling the other one about it. So that's the format mostly for this one as well. But so like, it's hard for me to be like, oh my gosh, this podcast is so great. It's got a billion episodes. But this one especially, I would say that the episode about after school specials is perfect because it like has this like awesome like familiarity and like nostalgic factor where you're like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about after school specials. And there's like the levity of like how interesting that whole thing is. But then the thing about this podcast that is so enjoyable to me is, of course, it's interesting to like look back at things that you think you know about. Of course, that's interesting. And to hear how that's actually not how they happened. But the most interesting thing about that is that they're looking at why we remember it. Not just like that we remember it wrong, but why we remember it wrong. So they're looking at it through this journalism of, through this lens of journalism and the media. And I feel like I am like a fairly critical consumer of media. But my thing that I always just divert to is like, you know, who's paying for this? Why am I being told this? You know, so I like just kind of like do those like very superficial explorations of like why this is what I'm consuming and why this is the story that I'm consuming. And they just go into like such a more nuanced and deep approach to it. Yet it is not like couched in like so much academia that you're like, do you know what I mean? It's great. It's like they are the bats that go out and eat the coffee bean that is Google academic. And then they poop out the beautiful coffee that we drink. It's like that. Basically. And I gotta be honest with you, I was really like, I started listening to this one because I was running out of maintenance phase and I needed to make it last longer. And at first I was like, who is this Sarah? She's not Aubrey. But now I'm really beginning to warm to Sarah in her Sarah-ness. And I think, again, these are older episodes and like Aubrey brings up such an interesting thing about Michael that I really enjoy. But I really enjoy Sarah's perspective so much in these episodes. Just glad they're all out there doing their thing. It's pretty rad. So those are my recommendations. I wrote some stuff down. Oh, I'm also reading this book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski. I am probably saying those things very wrong. I apologize. And it is interesting and I am enjoying it, but I'm not ready to talk about it in any way. Oh my gosh, I wrote down so much stuff about the You're Wrong About After School Special. Okay, but it's like we don't need to we don't need to have a book talk about it. Oh, it was so good though. There were so many good things about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That was delicious. Maybe we need to have a, what do you want to do? Maybe if you're a patron of the podcast, do you want to have a Discord podcast chat out? Like, we don't need to have, okay, that actually would be pretty fun though. Do you want to do like a book club, but like a podcast club over on Discord? Like we could just, maybe every week or two, we could listen to a podcast from, I don't know, I think these would be really good. Either maintenance phase or You're Wrong About. And then we could like discuss. What do you think? I think that would be super fun. Because it would be like so much less commitment than a whole book. Oh my gosh, do you want to do it? Let's do it. Okay, if you're interested, tell me about it on the Patreon group page, whatever thing. Tell me somehow that you're interested. And if you're like, I am not a patron of your podcast, you can become a patron of the podcast. You can write in your own donation level. So any donation level is fine. That you all get the same stuff. So just saying. Okay. So there's that. Then, oh my gosh, should we maybe talk about knitting for like 20 or 30 seconds? Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So I finished some socks. So this is my, so Joanna Spring, who is Knit Spin Farm, she does a back club, which I may have just joined. Don't tell anybody. Oops. She has a back club. She also has a self-striping sock club, and her self-striping sock club is Little Known Holidays. So I'm not a member of the sock club, the sock yarn club, because and I don't knit socks very fast, but this is one of her sock club colorways that then she does usually the first of the month, like in the fall and winter. She'll do like a dyed to order. So like October 1st, she did a bunch of dyed to order slots with certain colorways. And then November 1st, I believe she will do the same thing. If not, sometime soon. But this was her puzzles, like puzzle day colorway. So it's like a pencil colorway. Right? How cute is that? And then I literally can't remember what the sock pattern's called. Dang it. It's like, it's not licorice though, right? Ugh, you guys. Why do you let me host this podcast? You know my mind is just a sieve. It's so sievey. Okay, so I was like, is it licorice? Is it Twister? It's Twizzler. So I was close. The Twizzler Socks by Tangled Becca, B-E-K-A-H. And it's basically just, I think this is a free pattern. Now that I'm about to tell you what it is, let me look. It's free. Okay, so it's basically just like stockinette, and then you slip every third stitch. So yeah, it's just a really fun little pattern, and I enjoy it quite a lot. And I do like an afterthought heel. I do extra stitches before I start my decreases on my afterthought heel. My ankles are very chonky, and so that just works better for me. If that way it's not as tight around like that diagonal that goes between like the heel of your foot and then like the bend of your foot. Like if your afterthought heel socks feel snug right there, what I do is knit extra rows before I start the decreases on my heel, and it seems to work for me. Okay, so yay, I'm so excited that I finished a pair of socks. And then the next, okay, I'll show you that next since. So then I haven't worked much on my sweater, but I didn't show it to you last time. So I'm hoping it looks different than the time before that you saw. I am knitting Hillary Fluff and the Magic Fungi, which is by Bunny Muff, which is a cardigan, which is stranded color work. And it's on the smallest needle in the universe. You can't see it. Not intentionally, it's just how that worked. Oh my gosh, look how cute it is! So I was having doubts about my color choices, but now that I've put it away for a little while and I'm looking at it again, I'm like, okay, that's actually pretty cute. Right? I'm actually smitten again. It's so cute, right? So I am really enjoying knitting on this. I have been knitting on my Stephen Wesh Mystery Cow, so this has definitely taken a very back seat. But I am excited to finish my mystery knit along so that I can get back to it because, oh my gosh, right? So cute. And I'm knitting this primarily with Regia Finur, which I really love for color work, and just in general, I really like it. I'm very tempted, the Woolly Thistle, which is where I would get my Regia. She has just like a plain pullover sweater that I think she calls like just the vanilla sweater. And it's just made with a solid color of Regia, but like some of them are heathery. And then of course some of them are just plain solids. And it is darling, and I'm highly tempted to make it. This is just like a great, it's not the softest wool by any stretch of the imagination. But it's also not like, ugh. I would definitely wear it to my skin, next to my skin, if I was somewhere cold. Like if I knew that I weren't going to get hot. But otherwise I would probably wear a t-shirt under it because it's not, but I would do that with any sweater, really. As long as I was like not sweaty, I think I would not mind it next to my skin at all. Yeah, I mean, it has just a little bit of, this will be the podcast, just me being like, putting it under my armpits, under my boobs, and be like, okay, I think it's fine. So it's primarily finool, but it's also some, oh my gosh, how did I not realize it smelled so sheepy? It's also Briggs & Little, their Sport, which is just a single ply. So yeah, it's those two things. Yeah, man, that is like super sheepy in a great way, of course. Now I have wool up my nose. Okay, so there's that. And then the only other thing I'll show you is my mystery cowl. So if you're, I have just completed Clue 3. Clue 4 dropped this morning, but I haven't started it yet. So if you don't want to see my shawl, you can just leave here. I'll see you later. For like a week now, I've had the like in my ear. I checked my blood pressure, it's fine. It's just like some weird sinus thing. But it's so annoying. Okay, so I'm going to show you my mystery Stephen West. Is it shawlography this year? I can't remember. It's this year's mystery knit along, and I have finished Clue 3. So if you don't want to see it, leave now. This is your last chance. I'm going to show you. Okay, here we go. Right. Wow. I even have it on a long enough needle to kind of show you, which never happens. I mean, how fun is that? Like, of course, when it blocks, these will all show up a bit better, but there's these like fun, I had these done last time, but there's these fun triangle stitches, and then these bananas, like I-cord things. And then, what the heck is this? It's like a triangular bobble. Right? How fun are those? Some people's looked really rectangular, which was super cool. I don't know how they got that to happen. Mine definitely look like little mesas or something. And then there's like plain old bobbles over these like fun triangle sections. And then of course you get some brioche. Here's the wrong side of my brioche, which is super cute, right? Oof. And then you get these, I hate working these stitches so much. These are stitches that you create doing like a bunch of yarn overs. And then the next row you like drop your yarn overs and, well, yeah, you drop all the yarn overs so that it's just one super elongated stitch, and then you basically like cable it. But the way I knit, they are the worst. Like I can never get them up to the needle to work off of. So what I actually end up doing, I worked this onto a circular needle intentionally, onto a interchangeable needle specifically so that I could just take the needle tip off of the side that I was working from and work it that way. Just work it from the cable because I hate them. They get like all twisted up and like all over each other and they won't slide. It makes me bananas. Which is also one of the reasons I never have my shawl on a needle that's big enough to show you anything. Or my sweater. Because the way I knit, I like all my knit stitches crunched up next to each other. So that I'm not constantly like moving stitches around. But I'm pretty pleased with it. And so you can actually stop it at this point and just do an I-cord bind off. But I'm going to go for the stripey thing, I think. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And I'm loving other people's. So many people's are gorgeous. And I don't know, there's something that's really fun about this one. I've never seen one where I was like, ooh, I don't like those colors. Because the colors do interact with each other at every turn. There's never like a bad combination of colors. Do you know what I mean? Like there might be a section that looks like more subtle than it does on other people's, but there really isn't like a, oh, that was an unfortunate pairing that happened because of like, you don't know the colors when you don't know how the colors are going to land when you start your shawl. So I really like that. That's so enjoyable. I didn't show you my colors because I was just excited. I have another Crafty Girl in her alpaca sock. I have some hazel knits in her artisan sock. I have some Madeline Tosh. I have no idea. I have some Pearl Soho quill and then a completely unknown dark brown. I have no idea. That's superwash something. So yeah. I did add a strand of mohair into my baubles just because sometimes my baubles are really anemic and I wanted them to be very bowl-like. But I don't even think I needed to. I just did. So yeah. But anyway, that's my shawl. So yeah. I haven't sewn. I did one test sew for myself, so I can't show it to you yet. But I'm definitely itching to do more sewing. But right now I have a whole table full of library card bags that I'm working on. And then I need to do like wintry bags. And then I need to make myself some corduroy overalls and some corduroy pants. And maybe, oh, I realized that I purchased a pair of Snag wool tights, but they're footless. And I love them. And I am so excited about them because that makes it easier to wear dresses in the winter time. They're like 50% merino wool, I think. And for me, I have very big thighs and very big butt and very big calves, even for my size. So I think I'm like a size 30 ready to wear bottom. That was like a lot of words together. But some people need the size to fit their waist. I need the size to fit like my thighs and to some extent my butt, but really my thighs and my calves are also like just robust. I mean, they carry me around. Good job, calves. But so I do not have luck finding tights and things like that, but these are really nice so far. I do wear them with like a pair of not cycling shorts, they're not padded, a pair of like spandexy shorts over them, just because I don't like the feeling of like tights rubbing against each other when I walk. That's just like any tight, I think. Not that I've worn any for a long time. I just like flashed back to like terrible like young person pantyhose, like chafing issues. But anyway, so did they have I got a pair that were footless, and that is like my favorite thing ever because I hate that feeling of your toes curling under when you wear tights. I don't know, what am I doing wrong with my life that I cannot wear tights in shoes that like I'll even like pull them down, like I'll pull them so the toes are like loose before I put my shoe on. But by the end of the day, my toes are still turned under, and I hate that feeling. Hate it. But so they make a footless pair, and they're long enough, this is the best, they're footless, but they're long enough that I can actually pull them over my heel. I don't know why that's so exciting to me. But it is. So they can like tuck into your socks nicely. And also like I don't like to have like constrictive things around my ankles very much, like the very elasticy things. I don't care for that feeling. So basically they're perfect. And of course I was like, I need to buy 1,100 more pairs. And so I go back and there's like none more of them left. Whatever, Snag Tights is always putting out new tights, so I'm excited. But anyway, that was all just to say that I wore like my little, if you remember a while ago, I made from Style Arc. I made like this tulip shaped dress. It's called their Sydney designer dress. And it was like a smoky lavender linen, but the linen is very heavyweight, so it's almost like too warm to wear in the summer. But I realized I could wear with those little footless tights, and it was so cute. I loved it. I'm getting really hot. I should not be wearing this sweater. Oh my gosh, but this is my favorite sweater in the whole universe. This is a Hohi Locatelli pattern. I don't remember what it is, but maybe I'll remember to put it in the show notes. And this is Brooklyn Tweed fingering weight loft or shelter. I can't remember which. In the Hayloft colorway. It is 100% my favorite sweater in the world. It took me 9,000 years to make it. And that's really just what I should do forever and ever and ever. Amen. Is only make sweaters that take me 9,000 years to make, because I love them. Just saying. Anyway, I think that's all. Whew. I hope you can enjoy some leaves if you live in a place where there are fall leaves. I hope that, I don't know what else to hope for you. There's so many things I hope for you. I hope that you get something that is spiced in a way that you enjoy. I tried the pumpkin spice cold brew, and while I loved the way it felt in my mouth, I did not enjoy the taste of it. I love the pumpkin spice, but not with the coffee. This is who I am. So I'm leaving extra pumpkin spice coffee for you. And if you don't like it, yay! That other person who really loves it gets even more. Yay. I'm waiting for the chestnut one. The chestnut praline. That's my favorite. I hope you have a very crunchy apple if you like very crunchy apples. I hope you get one with russeting. It's a surprise, and it's always a treat to get the rusty apple. And if you see the russet apple at the grocery store and you're okay with russeting, could you just buy it and take care of it? Because some people think that that's a bad thing, but you know that it's a good thing. And so you don't want that apple to be homeless. Take it home and then eat it. It's kind of twisted, but that's how they fulfill their destiny. That's how they get their little apple angel wings. Okay? Okay. I'll talk next time. So just a little bit more about the whole intramuscular vaccine administration thing. I'm not a doctor. I am not a nurse. I am not a pharmacy technician. I am just a human living in a fat body. So everything I say, take with a grain of salt. There's lots of problems with this chart, and I'll post a link to it in the show notes. That's the CDC's chart that recommends that women over 200 pounds, men over 260 pounds, receive their administration with a 1.5 inch needle versus 1 inch. There's lots of problems with that. Like we talked about, like Rock is a big guy. He doesn't need the longer needle. You might be a 250 pound woman and you carry all your weight in your butt and you don't really need the longer needle. Like there's like lots of different things. I think the theory is that you put the longer needle on and like it's a fail-safe, right? Like you may not need it. You may push it in 3/4 of an inch and hit muscle. Mwah, perfect. You don't have to push it in the whole way. It is probably a little bit more difficult because it'd be easier to push against somebody's skin versus, but that's a whole thing. I don't administer intramuscular shots very often or at all. And like, it's a sticky wicket, right? Like it's a super sticky wicket because this is the thing. Like you say to the person who's giving you your shot, like, oh, I would like the 1.5 inch needle per the CDC suggestion. They could say to you, no, you don't need that one. And she may be thinking, I assessed you and I definitely don't need that longer needle. This one will get into your muscle fine. Or they could be thinking, yeah, the 1 inch is fine. You'll be fine. And those are very different things, right? But they may like read to us as the same answer, which is really problematic, right? Because I had another person that just talked to me yesterday and she was like, the pharmacy tech was like, well, you should be fine with this 1 inch needle. And it's like, should be's really not what I'm going for here, right? Like this vaccine is affecting fat people more adversely, or at least that's what we're being told, is affecting fat people more adversely than thin people. So should be fine is really not what I'm looking for, especially when in like 5 years and we do the sum up on this thing, it's going to be like, well, fat people got real sick and they just cost everybody a ton of money because they were so sick. And it's like, well, maybe should be fine is not quite good enough, right? Like how much of that is because like some people didn't get their vaccines administered correctly and potentially had less immunity because of it? Now, it may not be that way at all. Like maybe we'll find out that it's the same immunity, whether it goes into your fat or goes into your muscle. Like, wouldn't that be lovely? I would love that to be the outcome. But like, we don't know right now. My phone's ringing. Anyway, so it is a sticky wicket, and it's a bad place to put healthcare workers that know what they're doing. But let's face it, and I know that if you're a healthcare worker, you know that there are some people who've been thrown into this slot of administering these vaccines who don't know the reason, like deeply understand the reason that that shot needs to get into somebody's muscle. They may not think that it really matters to the person. Like, I get the shot into your body, therefore you have the shot. The whole thing with the chart, looking at that CDC chart, like it says if the person weighs over 200 pounds, do you know what that looks like? Especially like, let's say you're like a 50-year-old white dude who's administering vaccines and you're a pharmacist and you've never like had like you've never looked at people's weights and their bodies like when you're talking to them. So like basically it's like my husband's understanding of what a 200-pound woman looks like. I don't even know what a 200-pound woman looks like. And I have probably been a 200-pound, no, I was like a 200-pound child. But you know what I mean? Like, that's like, and so then you have like this whole thing about like, well, fat people are bad. This lady is nice and interested, like she's nice and she's talking in complete sentences. And so she's probably not a bad person. So she's probably not that fat. Okay, I know that that sounds inflammatory if you're not a fat person. But like, that's a real thing, y'all. It's a real thing. And it's not everybody. Oh, Lord knows it's not everybody. But like the people who have the shot in their hand have a disproportionate amount of power over me in that moment. So, I know that's just like a rant I just wanted to throw in. Like, I get it. It is not, I don't want to be in this position. I want to just be able to be like, oh yeah, dude's totally got my best interest in mind. He's going to administer the shot how it needs to be. But like, that is not always the case. And that's not just me making it up. Like when I went to get my vaccine, it was not the correct needle length and I had to ask for it. I've now since had 3 other people in the matter of like 24 hours tell me the same thing. So like, it's an actual issue for those, the 3 of us that 4 of us happened to. And maybe it's only an interest and it's just, do you see the flush? Maybe it's only an issue for those 4 of us, but like those 4 of us are 4 people who have value. That's all. You stayed with me. I squished your face. I held your hands. I'll talk next time. Bye. How many times will I come back? Who knows? But here's another one. I had lots of fat healthcare providers say to me like, yeah, that's a basic tenet of administering a shot. Like everybody knows that. And I completely understand that if you are a trained, caring human being, that your thought process is like, that can't happen. Like, right? Like that is such a basic thing that it can't happen that somebody could get that incorrect. But like, just trust people when we say that it happens. Like, lived experience, y'all. Let's just trust each other. And like, I tried to look up, like, because I like tried to look up, like, okay, so how is because I thought, well, maybe they just administer the vaccines with a 1.5-inch needle for everybody. Because like, again, if 35% of Americans are obese, you would think that like, a lot of us probably need the 1.5-inch needle. So like, do they just in case, just put the 1.5-inch needle in everything? And I can't find that information. Like I found one thing from the Alabama Department of Health that said that like when they were sending out their, I can't remember if it was Pfizer or Moderna, but they were sending out their doses. They were like, if for every 100 doses, 85 are with the 1-inch needle and 15 are with the 1.5-inch needle. Well, statistically that seems wrong anyway. Like, let's just bring that up. But like, I couldn't find that information everywhere else. So like when I put this on Instagram, some people wrote in and said, oh yeah, the clinic I work at, we always use 1.5-inch needles because what happens is if I put the shot in you and I hit your muscle, I just stop and then administer the vaccine. So it doesn't hurt for me to use the longer needle. And a lot of people said, yeah, like we have like a stack of 1 inch and a stack of 1.5 inches. We look at you, we assess, we give you the one that you need. Some people said that like, oh, well, because this vaccine is frozen, there can be problems with like the person who's doing the thawing. It's not the person that is doing the administering. And so they might not thaw out the right proportion of vaccine. But then of course you can change. I don't think you can just change the needle, but like you can draw it up and whatever, you can make it work. Even if you have even if you have a package with the 1 inch needle, you can make it so that you can administer it with a 1.5 inch needle. I don't claim to know how that happens. Because again, it's like all very obtuse. Like I could not find, obtuse is not the right word. Solid. I can't think of the word. But yeah, like not transparent, opaque. That's what I'm going for. It's all like very opaque. And I get why. It's like the whole canning recipes thing, like, right? It's opaque so that you don't get in there and mess around and kill yourself. Like, I'm sure there's reason for it being opaque, but it is very frustrating as a consumer when, like, you're like, well, wait, did I get the 1 inch shot when I got mine? I didn't know to ask. And so, like, yeah, I'm worried about it. Like, that's the thing. But yeah, so that was just another thing to come back and say, like, I completely understand when healthcare workers were like, they were kind of, nobody was like, you're a liar. But I mean, I'm sure people were like, that seems unreasonable. Well, it's not unreasonable. Like, fat people are telling me, like, yeah, this is not happening for everybody. So yeah, just touching base with you. Let's see if I come back again. If not, I'll talk to you next time.